Welcome to Native Bidaské, Native News Online's weekly spotlight on the people making news and leading change in Indian country.
Welcome to another episode of Native Bidaské. I'm Levi Rickert, your host, and our sister publication here at Native News Online. We have a sister publication called Tribal Business News. Next week, the Tribal Business News is hosting a summit called the Great Lakes Tribal Economic Summit at Gun Lake, very close to Grand Rapids, Michigan. And with us today is the co-publisher of Tribal Business News, my friend, my business partner, Brian Edwards. Welcome to Native Bidaské, Brian. Let's talk about the summit.
What an honor to be on Bidaské. Thank you, Levi.
Yeah, you've been on a couple of times before, but this is always fun to talk with you. And just want to, before we talk about the summit, let's talk a little bit about Tribal Business News and how in October 2020, you and I and our group Indian Country Media started Tribal Business News. What is Tribal Business News and why was it created? Why do we really think it was important?
I mean, so TBN's a digital media outlet. We cover Native business, Indigenous entrepreneurs, and the tribal economy. And really, we started it because the mainstream business media just rarely pays attention to what's happening in Indian country. They, maybe follow Indian gaming, but they really don't know what else is going on. And tribes are running billion-dollar enterprises. They're building companies in the energy sector, in federal contracting and finance. And really, in doing all that, they're shaping the future for their communities. So our job at Tribal Business News is to really shine a light on that work and provide information for tribal leaders, entrepreneurs, and tribal citizens so they can use them, as well as, really informing and educating bankers, lawyers, policymakers, and others that maybe don't really know too much about doing business in Indian country.
Yeah, and so when we talk about the tribal economy, what does that really mean today, and how are tribes in the Great Lakes region, how are they shaping it?
I mean, the tribal economy is really sovereignty in action. Yes, gaming is a part of it, a $44 billion part of it, but increasingly tribes are building non-gaming enterprises, everything from construction companies and native banks to renewable energy projects and companies. Here in the Great Lakes, tribes are showing what diversification really looks like. Was recently reported. Michigan's 12 tribes now generate over $1 billion a year, that's billion with a B, in non-gaming impact in the state. And that revenue and the profits from it funds tribal healthcare, native housing, language programs, all things that strengthen the communities. So when we say tribal economy, we're really talking about tribes leading with culture and sovereignty, but also really competing in mainstream markets.
And I may add that since I live in Michigan, been familiar with Michigan Indians, I was called an Indian when I was a little boy, but Native Americans since in my lifetime, several of the tribes actually did not get their re-acknowledgement or federal recognition until the mid-90s. So you could argue that they spent one decade basically kind of in the infancy stage, and now they're probably moving beyond the toddler stage after these, but they actually are now thriving. And so that really is exciting, the $1.2 billion. And I just want to add that some of the tribes basically came online just recently as 30 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's really been amazing progress, even when you look at just this impact report that the Michigan tribes did will be one of the panels that we talk about at our conversation or at our summit. And there's other stories like this all over the country. We're working actually on a story on there's been a surge in impact reports, where tribes and groups of tribes and say all the tribes in Washington or Idaho have come together and said, like, here's what we're contributing to the economy. in our state. And, it's almost for tribes because, so many Native people and tribes are just fairly humble, I would say. And for them to be saying like, we're humble, but we're also billion-dollar businesses, right? We're multi-billion-dollar enterprises that contribute to the states, that the money doesn't just all stay on the reservation. Trust me, it spills over into the communities, adjacent to and around the reservation. So this is kind of the notion behind the summit. And really it's the Great Lakes Tribal Economic Summit in the sense that it's really for the tribal leaders and the enterprise executives and the indigenous entrepreneurs in the Great Lakes states, the great state of Michigan, the great state of Wisconsin, the great state of Minnesota, and Iowa as well. It's for those folks. But the attendance for this event, people come from all over the country now. I think last year we had somebody from Canada, if I'm not mistaken. So we're on our 4th year, and I think we're hopefully providing some value in terms of exposing what works and answering questions.
What makes this summit different, though, in terms of the Great Lakes region? Why is it important, do you feel, that Tribal Business News actually hosts this summit every year?
I think it's we have found time and time again, just people come and they connect because they're all doing their own thing, as it were, and they can come to this, they can learn some, what's working, what's not working, they can talk about issues, and they can connect with each other. And I mean, Levi, this is something you've said in conversations with me over the past, several months. People are looking for answers right now, right? I mean, I don't want to steal your thunder here, but, why don't you talk about that? Because why do you think it's important we do the summit? This was kind of your idea 5 years ago.
Well, what I like, in one thing that we were real cognizant of is we realize there are national conferences, and so but being based here in the Great Lakes region, we thought it'd be fun to do one. We even talked to Chris James over at the National Center, making sure that he didn't feel like we were stepping on his big toes. But no, and he was okay with it. And what I have found with these summits is they're really intimate. I mean, 200, 225 people show up versus I just came from the National Indian Health Board. They had 2,000 people registered, which is a great conference. Don't get me wrong, national conference, but something to be said about a smaller crowd where people get to see each other. And some conferences, like I ran into President Ness, former President Ness from Navajo. I had run into his wife, but then I didn't see him. And then just towards the end, before I left, I saw him. So I was so happy. But this is, you're confined to one area, and you're going to be seeing some same people. So there's really good opportunities for networking. But this particular year, there are so many people, as you mentioned, looking for answers. And I think a lot of it speaks to dealing with the new administration that came in. There was so many clawbacks on certain sectors and really across various sectors in Indian country that impacted us, whether it's education, energy with the pullback of the solar panel dollars. And so people are looking for answers. And I will be clear, we're not going to have all the answers, but I think it will be nice is some of the people we have on the agenda will be able to speak to some of the latest things happening in Washington and why we cannot get discouraged and give up. We have got to keep prodding along, and we're warriors, right? We're all Native people are warriors, and we will keep fighting for what we think is right. And in this case, fighting to build those tribal economies, and the Great Lakes Tribal Economic Summit is great for that. And tell us a little bit about the agenda in terms of who will be here.
So it's pretty broad. Let me say, I mean, What we try and do a little differently is this isn't like the typical conference with just PowerPoint after PowerPoint after PowerPoint. We haven't 100% outlawed PowerPoints, but what we mostly do is we sit people down on the comfy, chairs or the comfy couches, and we have like conversations about problems and about solutions, about how tribal energy, companies or tribes that are trying to do tribal energy projects are dealing with changes in funding, with the termination of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, right? So it's straight talk. We really build the agenda around the nuts and bolts of sovereignty. We don't really talk about gaming, but we do talk about federal contracting, which is a $25 billion sector, energy, including clean energy, which is still a growing need and a growing interest for tribes around the country and around the Great Lakes. Real estate and land development. There's been this incredible rise of land back, and tribes then figuring out how they're going to use the land to honor culture, but also to drive their economy. Workforce development, native finance. So what we also try to do is every session, every conversation that we have, we try to make clear what's in it for the tribe. Right? It's, it's that old radio station, WIFT, what's in it for tribes, right? So, and really, we're trying to be timely. Federal policies are shifting, and tribes in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota are hatching strategies that work. They're sharing strategies that work, and they're working now, and they're really rooted in those tribes' particular strengths. So that's why it's a great opportunity to bring people together to kind of talk about what they're doing and how they're approaching this transitional period. So,
and you mentioned land back. I just want to let our viewers know that's not just a slogan you see on T-shirts. I see T-shirts people wear land back, and you see bumper stickers and posters, but that has a real meaning, and tribes are getting land back. And so I'm glad this is part of the agenda, some of the talking discussions that will take place at the summit, because these are real things happening in Indian country, and Tribal Business News on an ongoing basis does a really good job. We can blow our own horn a little bit here, but we really do try to put forth what's really needed to be told in any particular week in, week out, year after year, because in the summit is actually a good way to showcase some of the work that we've been doing and talk about those discussions. And we have the former assistant secretary, Brian Newland. He was assistant secretary for Indian affairs. So that's exciting. It's gonna be a fireside chat talking with Brian, and
Brian with the Y. You're going to be talking with Brian Newland.
Yes. And well, earlier this year, I was talking to him in a conversation, and he said, Levi, we have got to get past the point where we feel like the federal government's going to come rescue us all the time. And that has really resonated. He probably told me that back in March, and that has stuck in my mind. I think about that often. And that is not to negate the trust and treaty responsibilities the federal government has for tribes, but it is really incumbent on tribes to coalesce, get together with their tribal councils and fellow tribes in the area, and really work hard to solve some of the problems that we know are prevalent in Indian country. And economic, it's amazing what money can do, isn't it right, Brian? I heard Jonathan Kozol one time say that. He said, the sociologist from Harvard, but he's written so many books I've read that he said it's amazing what money can do. And I think about that. We used to be, some of our tribes were so poor pre-casinos, where they literally had to have like cake sales just so they could raise money to get their tribal chairman to Washington and have a very important Indian meeting, right? And so, but now it's just like tribes are thriving, and they, you call your whoever handles your travel arrangements for you say, hey, get me a ticket cut for Washington. And so times have changed. Things are really moving, and we're happy to report on it. What else you want to talk about the summit, Brian?
I mean, there's just a great range of, like I said, topics. I'm excited to hear Brian's talk because we, did a pre-interview and got a little preview of it, where his talk is called "Don't Wait for Permission to Lead." And I know you're going to interview him in questions, but I've kind of heard the sentiment from some other people in Indian country as well. Like, now is the time to seize the moment, right? So I've heard Janie Hip, talk about that. I've heard Pete Upton talk about that. So we're in a period of transition. There's change. There's always change, and I think like any good business or business person, you just have to expect changes happening, and then how do you deal with it? So I'm super excited that Diane Kulo from the SBA, she's the assistant administrator for the Office of Native American Affairs. She's going to talk about what's going on with the SBA, both their loan programs and in particular their federal contracting, because that's something that I cover personally, is federal contracting, and it is a huge and has grown steadily for 20 years now. So it's a huge part of the tribal economy, and there are tribes in Michigan, there are tribes in Minnesota, there are tribes in Wisconsin that do federal contracting work. One of those folks, Ann Defoe-Sido, is the CEO of Makwa Global, which is a mill locks company. She's going to talk. It's a great story. They stood up their federal contracting business about 4 years ago. She came on board about 2 years ago, and it has just taken off. I mean, they went from a couple $1 million in federal contracting to 50 million, so and just great stories like that. We're going to break some news as well, relative to federal contracting as well as relative to energy. And I can't tell you what those bits of news are quite at this moment, Levi, but I mean, we always do like to have some good news coming out of the summit from organizations that are, what do you call it? Making news and leading change in India. So
that's right. That's our tagline for Native Bidaské.
We'll have some of that as well.
Well, I'm also excited because Diane is staying over after the summit on Wednesday afternoon, going to conduct a tribal consultation and talking about the programs of the SBA. And what I particularly like about that is happening in Michigan, our home state. And I have to tell you, I jokingly, when we talked to her about it initially, I said, we in the Great Lakes, we kind of feel like we're the flyby states. Washington, D.C., people, when they talk about Indian country, they think in terms of the Great Plains, but the Southwest, America's Southwest, California, 100 and some tribes, up in Alaska with all the tribes. But here in the Great Lakes, in Michigan in particular, we have 12, right? And I think combined we have 36, 37 in the Great Lakes region. And there's an organization called the Midwest Alliance of Sovereign Tribes, and 30-some tribes are part of that. So I'm excited that they're not just flying by this time. They're going to stop in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and give opportunities for tribal leaders and those interested in doing business with the federal government as it relates to the SBA to really a chance to have tribal consultation. And as Brian, you and I both know, tribal consultation is so critical to preservation of tribal sovereignty. As often people kind of equate the two together, but certainly under the umbrella of tribal sovereignty, tribal consultation is a must, because there have been times in the past somebody from the federal government texted the chairman and said, hey, the bulldozer is showing up, build that wall down there. That's a true story. And 15 minutes before it happened, and they called that tribal consultation. That's not tribal consultation. Tribal consultation is allowing a block of time, 3 hours next Wednesday afternoon, where people can come in and actually engage with Diane. So, and she actually is going to have a provision for those who want to watch it on video and I guess call in or however they do that, access it with a live stream. And so I think maybe both publications, Brian, we can get that out there so that they know how to access that.
I would say too, they're asking people to register by the 12th. So, so if you're watching this, you can go to Tribal Business News. We do have a story about the SBA tribal consultation. We'll make sure it's right there on the front page. And that'll have links to the information about how you can register for the consultation. But sounds like
speaking of registration, is there still time for anyone who wants to get to Grand Rapids, Michigan? Because the Gun Lake Casino Resort, where the Great Lakes Tribal Economic Summit will take place next Tuesday and Wednesday, only 30-minute ride from the airport, the Gerald R. Ford International Airport in Grand Rapids. Is there still time to register? How do people register?
This is Indian country. People are going to just show up and walk in. They do every year.
I love it.
I mean, it's like some people register and then can't end up making it, and other people just show up, which I love too, right? So the more the merrier. If you care about the tribal economy and economic sovereignty and tribal, businesses being successful and helping, build community, then, come along. And if you can't make it, we'll certainly be doing stories and coverage of sessions and panels and some of the news that's going to be announced. So.
Yeah, and I'll say this as we close. I just feel like there's so many good things happening in Indian country, and I know that we try to amplify those in Tribal Business News and over here at Native News Online all the time on an ongoing basis. But certainly the summit will actually allow that to happen even more, to show and tell what the great things are happening when it comes to tribal economies. Anything else you want to say, Brian, before we sign off?
Miigwech.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. Miigwech, Steve, for coming on. And to our viewers, hope you can come to the summit. And we'll be back next week with another episode of Native Bidaské. In the meantime, as I like to tell you every week, young ones, give those elders hugs, and elders, keep those young ones close to you. And we're all in this together. Miigwech, we'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining us. If you value our warrior journalism for Indian country, please consider supporting our work by scanning the QR code or visiting the link below. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media, and sign up for our free daily newsletter. Miigwech.